Today on BenchBriefs, we're looking at a fascinating Supreme Court of Canada decision that deals with the intersection of municipal powers, telecommunications, and infrastructure fees. The case is Barrie Public Utilities vs. Canadian Cable Television Association, decided in 2003. It's a great example of how different levels of government navigate their roles when it comes to regulating modern communications technology. So, what's the story here? The City of Barrie, through its Public Utilities Commission, wanted to charge Canadian cable companies a fee for using the city's utility poles. These poles are essential for running cable lines that bring television and internet services to homes and businesses. Barrie argued that since these poles belong to the municipality, cable companies should pay for the privilege of using that infrastructure. The Canadian Cable Television Association wasn't having it. They challenged the fee, saying the municipal bylaw that allowed Barrie to impose this charge wasn't valid. They argued the city didn't have the legal authority to do this and that federal telecommunications laws, which regulate cable companies, should take precedence. Essentially, they said Barrie was overstepping its jurisdiction by trying to regulate something that the federal government controls. At the heart of the dispute were three main legal questions. First, does a municipality like Barrie even have the jurisdiction to impose fees on cable companies for using municipal utility poles? Second, are municipal bylaws imposing such fees valid when you consider federal telecommunications legislation and the existing regulatory frameworks? And third, how do federal and provincial or municipal regulatory regimes interact when it comes to cable companies' use of infrastructure? The Supreme Court had to carefully untangle these questions. On one hand, municipalities have powers granted by provincial laws to manage and charge for the use of their property, like utility poles. On the other hand, telecommunications is a federally regulated area under the Constitution, meaning the federal government has exclusive authority over it. This creates a tricky overlap. The court ultimately held that municipalities do have the jurisdiction to impose fees for the use of municipal infrastructure like utility poles, as long as those fees are for the use of municipal property and don't regulate the telecommunication services themselves. In other words, Barrie could charge cable companies for using its poles, but it couldn't interfere with the cable company's operations or services, which are federally regulated. This decision clarified an important point. Municipal powers over property and local infrastructure can coexist with federal regulation of telecommunications. The two levels of government have distinct but complementary roles. Municipalities can manage and charge for access to their infrastructure, but they can't regulate the content or delivery of telecommunications services. Why does this matter beyond Barrie? Well, as technology continues to evolve and telecommunications infrastructure expands, the question of who controls what becomes more critical. Cities own a lot of the physical infrastructure that companies need to operate: poles, conduits, rights of way, and they want to be compensated fairly. But at the same time, we need a consistent regulatory framework at the federal level to ensure reliable and equitable telecommunications services across the country. This case set an important precedent for balancing those interests. It confirmed that municipalities are not powerless when it comes to their own assets, but also reinforced the supremacy of federal regulation in telecommunications. This balance helps avoid jurisdictional conflicts and supports the smooth delivery of services Canadians rely on every day. Thanks for listening to this episode of Bench Briefs. Be sure to join us next time as we dive into another case that shapes the Canadian legal landscape. Until then, take care.